Welcome to the Chasing Thoughts podcast. Listen in as Mindy, Keith, and their guests take a deep dive into their own minds and souls to investigate the beauty of imperfection, challenge their beliefs, and embrace the richness of living a truly authentic life. Welcome to Chasing Thoughts.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Chasing Thoughts. Today, we are talking with Matthew Britt. Matthew is the head of sales and strategic partnership at Food Forest Abundance. And I love this next sentence because I don't think I really know what it means. So I can't wait for you to tell me. It says, building a localized, decentralized food supply and keeping it extremely simple by working with permanent agriculture. That sounds like a great sentence. I don't know what it means. I'm excited to find out in this episode. But first, can you tell us just a little bit about who you are as a human? I know I looked back at your LinkedIn and I saw that you had a lot of environmental stuff. I love that you had a positive clothing company at one time. So tell us a little bit about who you are before you share your specific wisdom on food.
Well, Mindy and Keith, thank you so much for having me here today. First of all, I'm grateful that I get to spend this time with you and your guests, and I hope I can provide a lot of value for everybody listening. So my background, I'm Canadian. I was born in Niagara Falls and spent the first 6 years of my life living there, then moved to Winnipeg, spent 6 years there, then moved to Thunder Bay, spent 12 years there, and then now live in Ottawa. So I've moved around quite a bit, and through that journey, really discovered a passion for people and making lots of friends and helping others. And I found myself as a teenager into my early 20s where I would end up in challenging situations, fights, if you will, sometimes to protect others. So I've had that nature in my background where I love to find solutions to problems and help people. And as I moved into my early adult life, I'd wanted to be a professional athlete. I actually won a national championship as a hockey player. And on that journey, I separated both of my shoulders 3 times, actually, in the year my team won a national championship. And that ended the dream of going pro. So I kind of made a pivot towards working with people in the fitness world. It was an easy transition. I had spent most of my life working out, training, and then in gyms and all of that. So it was an easy pivot into the fitness world. I ended up doing personal training for about a decade. I saw myself as someone who helped people reclaim their health through mindset, through nutrition, through movement, breath work, etc. And I help people get off pharmaceutical drugs. See, I had a belief the body will heal itself. The brilliance of the human design is beyond what we can comprehend. And I thought, hey, if we could heal a cut, what else can we heal? If we just have the right environment in our body. So in my journey through personal training and the nonstop learning that I did there, I was able to successfully help people get off all kinds of pharmaceutical drugs, heal things that the doctor said they couldn't heal. So that was a miraculous experience for myself. From there, I ended up transitioning into, as you mentioned, I had a positive apparel brand called Let's Hug It Out, which was a simple business really around spreading hugs, positive vibes, and happiness. I sold t-shirts all over the world, and I loved that brand and I intend to bring it back. One of the things I loved most about it is when people spent $20 on a t-shirt, they got unlimited value from that t-shirt because every time they put it on, they knew what it stood for. They felt the feelings. They got the smiles. They got the random hugs. They got people, walking past them and making a comment about, I love your shirt, or that messaging. So people got incredible value from that $20 spend. And I heard over and over and over again from people, it was the favorite shirt they ever had because of that. And after that, I moved into the arena of renewable energy, had my own company in the solar space, had a lot of success there. And during the 2020 fiasco we all went through, I ended up having to close that company. The Canadian government shut down a lot of our markets, and it ended up really crippling our company. And I had to make a choice at that time. Do I keep trying to fight through, or do I take the lessons and learnings and make a pivot? And at that time I did. I made a pivot, shut down the business I owned, moved towards working actually in the United States in solar. I joined a company in the US, became their head of business development, built their installer network. And while I was doing that, I came across the company that I'm at today, that I've now become a partner in, owner in. I had no business in this space. I had zero experience in it. But when I saw it, I realized that what a tremendous mission-driven business that could make an impact in the lives of billions of people when we succeed at our mission. When I was in the solar space, when I came across Food Forest Abundance, where I'm at now, I originally was trying to unify the two businesses. Not that they had to become one, but that they collaborated. Because everybody putting a solar array on their house, they're looking for self-sufficiency. That's why they're doing it. And everybody installing a permaculture food forest on their property, well, they're looking for self-sufficiency too. So I figured, hey, all the solar customers potentially would want to learn about a food forest, and all the food forest customers may want to learn about solar. So let's explore collaboration. Wasn't the right time for the solar company, but as I got to learn more about Jim Gale, the CEO of Food Forest Abundance, and the mission of the company and the direction they wanted to go, I realized that this is where I want to be. I want to make an impact on as big of a scale as I can. And this doesn't have limits. Where the solar company, we were in 23 US states, lots of impact. Here, inside 3 years, we've done business in 54 countries.
Wow.
Way bigger. We have no barriers. Design is done virtually. Installation is done with local people. We use local native plants. Our impact can scale around the world very, very easily. And that got me excited. So I packed up my solar stuff and put that in the closet, came over here.
I love your story. I mean, I think I love hearing people's stories in general, but the way you told your story and how much accurate self-assessment and positivity and self-awareness was in it was really beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I'll say, I started watching hockey this last year for the first time, and it is now my favorite sport to watch on TV.
Yes,
Because it's fast, it's fun, and there is no other sport where you like fist it out with another guy and then just take a timeout and go back to the game.
Yeah. And you got nowhere to go. You got those boards, right? You
Yeah.
are in that rink. You can't go anywhere else.
Yeah, so that's very interesting, and what a unique experience that you had being able to play that sport at the level that you did.
Yeah, I loved it.
So tell us a little bit more about what exactly the company that you work for now does. What is their mission, and then how is that mission being realized?
Well, our mission is food forests everywhere, every yard, every community across the earth. And we utilize a science called permaculture, permanent agriculture. And to keep it really simple, we mimic nature. So when you look out at a forest, who's watering that forest? Nobody. Yet we think we need to constantly be watering our grass and our gardens and our stuff, right? Well, why? Why is that happening? What's the difference between these two things? One is working with nature. The other is working against nature. And therein lies the problem. The human currently thinks they're smarter. In the way we produce our food today, with that monoculture farming system, where we use all kinds of chemical inputs. We have completely centralized and centralized and centralized that food production system. We fight nature every step of the way, therefore it's hard. We use poisons that literally kill everything. Oh, wait, except the genetically modified plant that has been bred to not die from the poison. And if it's killing that life, what else is it killing? Could be us. So we realize that let's stop trying to be smarter than, let's embrace what nature already does and the brilliance and work with it to produce the abundance that is literally already here.
Mm.
So what we do as a business is we design and install permaculture food forests. And we mimic the forest, where when most people grow food today, whether that's your annual garden that you plant every spring and harvest every fall, or you're a monoculture farmer, you grow in one layer of production. But again, look at the forest. That's not what the forest does. The forest grows in 7 layers of production. Wow, what a concept. Let's put the plants in the right order, give them what they need, and produce way more food in that same area. Right? Last I counted, 7 was bigger than 1.
Yeah.
Right? So with a permaculture food forest, we work in that 7 layers of production. We can utilize the mycelial network, the mushrooms, the funguses. We can utilize the roots and tubers and your ground cover and your small shrubs and your larger shrubs, your bushes, your understory trees, your canopy trees, and then your vines. And mix all of this together with local native plants. Okay. That's always a thing that people question, is like, okay, well, you're in Canada, you have winter, must be hard there. You know, you don't live in Florida where you can't grow year round. Well, it's just different. There are native plants that are used to going dormant every fall, but they still grow back in the spring, and I don't have to replant them. They do what they do, and I just get out of the way. So we, as an example, we have a food forest, one of the people in our network in northern Minnesota on the tip of Lake Superior, that's got over 300 different edible perennial plants in that food system. It produces a massive amount of food. It's incredibly diverse. What are you saying, Keith?
So over 300, like that's, I feel like I'm in a college class right now. That just blows like my mind completely.
Yeah. There's over 100,000 edible perennial plants. Most people could name under 50 and more likely under 20.
Yeah. Yeah. Like for me, like if my wife said perennial plants, I'm going to go to Stop and Shop and pick up the perennial that they sell once a year. Like that's where you get it. That's where they come from. And that, so basically I'm that guy you're trying to reach, like to educate about, like, cause everything you're saying, I have never heard any of this before in my life.
Yeah.
And I would say, Keith, from what I know of you, you're very conscious about mindset and food and your whole system working together and the planet, right? So I would assume that, I know for me, I'm passionate about that. So the holistic approach of this is appealing to me.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a house in suburbia, right? Regular, normal neighborhood. Immediately took out all my grass because I'm not going to do water grass. That seems silly to me. Put in all native plants. But what you're talking about is like the next level of that. And I love it because I was just telling Keith up here, my mind says, well, I have a growing season of 2 months. Like I'll grow, a little tiny garden that feeds my husband and I, but I am stopped and limited by my own knowledge of what's possible.
Yes. And that's most people. We
Yeah.
are limited by what we don't know. And the great news is there's other people that do know. And you don't have to have all the answers, but you have to be willing to keep an open mind and seek them out. And that's where, again, companies like us come into play. We are not the only permaculture company in the world, that's for sure. I would argue that we have positioned ourselves as one of the premier companies now, and maybe we've had the greatest impact over the world as far as diversity in countries that we've worked in already in this very short period of time. And I attribute that a lot to, Jim Gale and his ability to get on a lot of podcasts. He spoke to lots of people over the past 3 years, basically. And then the great team of people that we have around us. Excuse me. And people are looking for this now. I think that's an important piece is Jim likes to say this. It's not his quote, but it's very, very relevant. There's one thing stronger than all of the armies in the world, and that is an idea whose time has come. And that statement implies this isn't a new idea. The idea already existed. It's just now the time has come for that idea to really take off. And I believe that this is that time. This is the idea whose time has come. Permaculture is a very simple solution. It's reconnecting us back to nature in a world that is constantly trying to disconnect us from nature. It is a way for us to reduce chemical inputs into our life, stress, poisons, get us reconnected back to something simple, which does the work for us and will help create abundance. Abundance is already here, right? Let's not kid ourselves. Nature is already abundant. We've just been fooled to believe it's not. Why have we been fooled? Well, abundance is free, right? Another simple analogy. You can count the seeds in an apple, but you cannot count the apples in a seed.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And if we just let nature do what nature does best and we give it the ideal conditions it needs to thrive, we can literally create that localized, decentralized food supply and never have anybody go hungry. And we could do this all over the world. We could green the desert. It has been proven. It's been done over and over again. The fact that we still have people going hungry today is not because we don't have enough. It's not because there's overpopulation. It's not because of anything other than our ignorance and the tyrannical controls that certain people want to have over others. Abundance is here for all of us. It is way simpler than we think. Here's another great quote. Although the problems of the world seem increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple.
Yeah.
And we think that solution is permaculture.
Yeah, I love this conversation because I think, in the last couple of years, the amount that people think about the future has grown exponentially, not only because of COVID, but because of AI. People spend a lot more time thinking about the future, climate change. And the way I think of it is, climate change is happening, all this stuff is happening. Can we be resourceful enough and connected enough to combat that, right? And it's sort of like this race of how it's gonna turn out, in my opinion. So I was wondering if you could just speak a little bit more to that piece, how the the food system that we have now, particularly, I mean, America, Canada, but like trucks driving food and food coming from other countries and everything, that it's so inefficient, ineffective, old fashioned. Like, what, in your opinion, do we need to do to survive the future that we're all facing?
Well, if the politicians were actually speaking truth, which they're not, and they actually believed that they wanted to find solutions to things like climate change and pandemics and such, this would be something they would actually encourage everybody to do, right?
Right.
So let's just take as an example the climate change conversation. So we've got a belief that burning fossil fuels is causing our climate to warm, and we need to reduce all of this carbon in the atmosphere to cool the population. Well, plants sequester carbon. One. Two, shouldn't the food that we're consuming be grown in your yard instead of 1,000 miles away? I don't know. Sounds pretty logical to me and very simple. So why isn't the guy at the podium going, listen, city of Ottawa, we really care about nature and the climate, and we want to save the world. We're going to encourage all of you to grow your own food at home, starting now. And the tax dollars that we've been collecting from you since the beginning of time, we're actually going to give every one of you $5,000 to get a permaculture design for your property, take out your lawn that doesn't want to be there anyways, stop wasting water on this thing, stop wasting resources, time, energy, fuel on caring for this thing that doesn't want to be there. And we're going to implement a permaculture design foods production system at your own house. Oh, you don't own a lawn? Okay. Well, we also have a lot of other green spaces around the city that we also spend tens of thousands to millions of dollars to care for and spray chemicals on and man hours and all this stuff. We're going to divert all that attention to growing food.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, now that we're not using poison on the food and the poison isn't going into the air and we're not driving as far with our gas, you're all going to be healthier. So the likelihood of people dying from pandemics is going to also go down, because if we look at the info, the people who have been getting sick and dying in the last pandemic had 4 comorbidities or more. What's a comorbidity? It means they were already sick with things that were potentially killing them, 4 of them, right? So Mr. Politician all of a sudden looks really good because he's solving climate change issue, food security issue, pandemic issue in one shot. And if you want to really challenge your politician, go to him and say, which one of these is most important to you? Yeah. Is it climate change? Is it pandemics? Is it food security? Which one do you care about most? They'll give you an answer. Okay. What are you doing about it?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one of the things I love about the way you're describing your company is it's working to provide answers, create health, where the system that is in place now, and me and Minnie have talked about this before, the food is seems like it's designed to make us sick. Then, so we're spending money there, then spending money at the doctors who will then prescribe a pill. And then we're on that for so long. You know, if not for eternity, even like that drug now, Ozempic, that people are using for weight loss. And there's so many side effects and issues that people are having now with that, not being able to get off and all kinds of stuff. you know, and it's all driving the money towards the big corporations, which are then driving the money towards the politicians and keeping this the sick in like, you know, cycle going.
The United States is the sickest company in the or country in the world.
Yeah.
And it's a delicate thing because not all these people are bad, right?
Right.
We often get the mentality of the, you know, when they're doing all these bad people doing bad things, evil people doing evil things. And it's not that way. These people they're not selling food to make you sick. They're designing food to make you want to eat more of it so they make more money.
Mm.
Right? And a side effect of them trying to get you addicted to the food so you buy more of it is that they put shittier and shittier ingredients, pardon my French, into that product. And those things are a contributor to making you sick because they aren't actually really food.
Right.
Right. And then, yes, our medical system, which is, by the way, owned by Big Pharma today. And if you don't see that, any of you listeners, you really got to take a look. It's the pharma industry and their massive amounts of money fund the medical schools. They fund the research at the medical schools. They fund the textbooks, so the curriculum taught in the school. They fund the journals where the research is published. They fund the regulatory agencies. They fund the lobbyists and the politicians.
Yeah.
They fund the whole thing. So, of course, the doctor who wants to help you, they got into medicine to help care for patients.
Yeah.
They want to help people live. They really do. They're good people. But if you're given the wrong information or the right information for the pharma world, and you become, see, the further you go in school, the more specialized you become, right? The narrower and narrower and narrower your worldview and what you're an expert at is. And you want that, right? I want a brain surgeon who knows all about the brain. If I'm going to be injured in a car accident, I want to go to somebody in the Western world because the emergency trauma surgery is the best. However, my day-to-day care, my doctor's not helping me heal from anything because my doctor has not been taught to help me heal. My doctor has been taught to prescribe a drug. And what is a drug? A drug is a chemical, a man-made chemical concoction that they can patent. Why is that important? Because if they can patent it, they can make money from it. You can't patent nature. You can only patent man-made things. And because they can patent it, they can make massive amounts of money on it. And then they can ensure through their control mechanisms of funding the school, funding the books, funding the doctors, funding the research, funding the journals, funding the regulatory agencies, funding the medical association, they can ensure that that patented drug gets pushed onto everybody who shows any sign of needing it. And then when you're on that drug and you have a side effect, instead of helping you heal from that side effect, they give you another drug. So the average person today is on 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 20 different drugs to mask symptoms, and they're not healing. And it's working very, very well if you're big pharma.
Right.
Right? But it's not working very well if you're the population. And they've done such a good job with funding the media that they make anybody who question it feel like they're a conspiracy theorist, or they're an anti-vaxxer, or they don't trust the science, right? Meanwhile, because they give billions of dollars to the media says whatever they want them to say and won't look into the truth, right? So we're currently in a system that is designed to do what it's doing very, very well. And it's not only in the medical system, it's our food production system, it's our financial system. And there are simple solutions, but we have to take back the power. It's there for us to take, right? Buckminster Fuller, you may or may not have heard of him. Brilliant man. Don't try to change the current system. Create a new one that makes the old obsolete. See, I believe, and Jim believes this, and the people that we're attracting around us believe this. Let's create a new system of growing food, not lawns. Let's work with nature instead of against it. Let's remove the poisons from the system so we reclaim our health. Let's provide people with the solutions to self-sufficiency, because when we get self-sufficient, they have no power over us. They currently have power over us because they control our food, they control our water, they control our energy, they control our money. They control us unless we take it back and we turn our backs on them and go the other direction. And then they're left controlling nobody except those who want to be controlled.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so big and it touches so many different areas, because as you're talking, I'm just thinking of all the other ways that Keith and I've talked and different guests we've had about the system and where we're at right now. And what just really struck me is, you called it, we need to take back our power, but with power comes responsibility, and with responsibility comes duty, right? And while these things are core human attributes, most of us, again, are sort of being channeled down this way where it's, dopamine addiction, not just with our phones, right, or zoning out, but even with food. When my kid was young, we used to do like, co-op, like where they drop the vegetable basket on our porch every month. And eating what was only ripened that season was such a vast difference on my life, because now people think, oh, I want, an apple. I just go get an apple anytime. But it actually provided so much more joy in my life, because when those things came out, I got to have it because it was the time of year for that to be had. And I think that's sort of the reconnection that you're talking about with nature, right? Is actually being in a give and take relationship with it. And there's just such not only beauty, but healing in that.
Yes. When you have food today, most of the time, it's dead. There is no life force energy in it. Now, contrast that to walking outside your front door and picking something fresh from the tree that is still in the ground. It literally still has life force energy in it. You take that and consume it, that goes into you.
Yeah.
Right? And as we move more and more people into the concrete jungle and get further and further away from nature, you guys have heard of grounding, I'm sure, right? Grounding mats, putting your feet on the soil, on the earth, and what that does for your body and how fast it does it. Well, in the city, there's less and less ability to ground, right? If you get, as more people get shoved into condo buildings with hundreds of people living in them, and they live their whole lives in this 15-minute city downtown, they're completely disconnected from one another. Although they're sandwiched on top of each other, there's no connection. There's no connection to nature. And you could argue it's what they want. Because if we get back to nature, if we get back to the understanding or understanding that we're all connected, we're not separate from, it's not Matthew is separate from nature. I am a part of nature, just like you two.
Yeah.
And if they can keep us separate from, we're easier to manipulate and control. If we reconnect to it, your stress goes down. Your mental faculties improve. Depression changes. Did you know that prisoners, so people that have spent time in jail, if they get involved in growing plants and growing food, that recidivism, which normally sits around 60%, so people reoffend 60% of the time. Out of every 10 prisoners, 6 of them are likely to go back to prison after they get out. That number plummets to under 10% if they get involved in a gardening program. Why? Well, I would believe it's because they have purpose again. They've reconnected to nature. They are caring for something. They're putting love into something. They're getting something back from it. They feel good that what they're growing is providing for somebody else. Isn't that fascinating? If we were to put growing situations in every prison across the United States, now every time you get 10 people in, 9 of them get out, only 1 of them reoffends or less. You've flipped that whole script on its head, right?
Mm.
What if every school had a food production system at it?
Mm.
What if the kids learned how to produce food at a very young age and grow it and care for plants? There'd probably be less fighting amongst one another, emotional dysregulation, ADHD. They'd concentrate more, right? They wouldn't want the screen. They'd want to go back out into nature.
Yeah, I think gardening is so interesting because it's helping you on a mental health level, and you can go sort of spiritual with the discussion, or you can get super scientific about how what's in the dirt is going into your skin and the food you eat and your gut, microbiome, and how that affects your anxiety. Like, so there's both something happening in this very scientific, practical way, and also in sort of this esoteric, spiritual way.
Absolutely.
And both conversations are happening right now, which is exciting,
Yep.
I think.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. It is on a microscopic level, very beneficial for us to interact with nature like that, and a macroscopic level, right? And both of those two things are being disconnected from us as we get further and further away from our food source, from each other, put more and more of our attention into devices, things that don't actually matter, distractions, right? Again, although the problems of the world seem increasingly complex, their solutions remain embarrassingly simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking especially when you're talking about like the mental health aspects of it, my doctor, when I first went to her, and this was like 20 years ago, to help with PTSD, she said the first thing you got to do is take your shoes and socks off, go outside, get on your knees and get in the dirt. Said start a garden, start digging up, like spend time with the earth.
Wow.
And at that time I was at a place where I was like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. What is that going to do for me? Because I need a pill. And then after years on the pills, I'm like, I'm getting worse and worse and worse. So now when I started actually doing that, things began to change for me. And this whole conversation is making me wonder how much that had to do with reconnecting with nature.
Mm.
And I would guess a lot.
Yeah. It's interesting too, Keith, because I know for you, like walking, forest walking, like sitting with plants, talking with plants, it's such a huge part of like your wisdom and spirituality and path now. How interesting that at one point, even playing in the dirt was like, ugh, right? Like you can
Yeah.
really see the impact and growth that you've had in that area. And that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only medicines that I'm on now, quote unquote medicines are plant-based medicines.
Yeah.
And which I love. There's also like this resurgence of that showing how beneficial those can be towards the mental health.
Absolutely.
And there's that huge stigma. But like you said, in fact, with cannabis, one of the reasons why it was outlawed was because a patent couldn't be put on it, because it's
Yes.
just a naturally growing flower.
Yes. Yeah, there's incredible benefits that people experience that have severe trauma, whether that is PTSD or, childhood trauma. You put them through an ibogaine ceremony as an example, and in very short order, some of those things can be completely removed from their life. Incredible transformations. It's fascinating, right? Psilocybin with the mushrooms. Another one, very, very powerful. Now, we're not telling you to go out and do that. Obviously go speak to a professional about all of this stuff. But the reality is anything that is a chemical is going to have a less positive impact on you as a human. And remember, chemicals are everywhere today, right? I have a belief, and my belief could be wrong, but this is a belief that I have, is that because we are bombarded with man-made chemicals in our food, in our clothes, in our cars, in the air we breathe, in every product we touch all around us, in our soaps, in our skin creams, in everything, right? There's chemicals in all of that stuff. Those chemicals get into our body. And what happens in our body? Well, we have chemical processes that take place in our body naturally, right? We have a hormonal system, an endocrine system. What is that? Those are chemicals. Because we have all these thousands, actually, albeit tens of thousands of chemicals in our external environment that are entering our internal environment, they are messing with our internal environment and those chemicals. Therefore, we are now chemically unbalanced.
Yes.
That chemical unbalance is causing a lot of confusion and problems. Now, again, I'm no doctor, and I could be way off. However, that is, in my opinion, a pretty good, simple thing to consider, right? If I was to have two chemicals over here and I'm trying to do an experiment, but I have all these other chemicals that get added into it, are my chemicals, my first two I'm trying to use, going to work the same? No, of course not. So what is any different about our body? Our chemicals are being thrown off because we're bombarded with other chemicals that we manufactured.
Yeah.
I've never thought of that before, but it makes such perfect sense to me. I enjoy listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson, like talking about the cosmos and everything. But one of the things he said that never sat right with me is he doesn't understand why people are so afraid of chemicals, because we are made of chemicals. And that never sat right. I mean, because you can have two chemicals that work together beautifully, but if you add in one other thing, it can turn into an explosion, it can turn into something that's carcinogenic, so it depends on the chemicals that we're dealing with. And like you said, we have the natural internal chemicals, and then what's happening while we're adding in all this other stuff from the external world.
Yeah. In around 2003, 2004, I happened to catch, this was back in my personal training, fitness days, removing people from pharmaceutical drugs through exercise. I saw a documentary on the show. You remember Nova?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Nova put out a show called The Disappearing Male. And it was all about the decline in sperm production and testosterone production. And that really hit home for me back then because it talked about all of the chemicals in our environment and how they're impacting the chemicals in our body. In particular, in this case, testosterone production, which is a chemical. And the ripple effect, right? What they were seeing at that time was less men being born, was already beginning to happen, lower sperm count in men, which meant more infertility issues, right? And now I fast forward to today. So I saw that at about, I don't remember exactly when it was, but I feel like it was around 2003, 2004, something like that. How many men and women aren't able to conceive? And they need medical intervention to help them get pregnant. That number has skyrocketed. Didn't used to be that way. And again, it ties back into the chemicals.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so big. And I'm going to tell you personally how this conversation really helped me. And then we'll have to wrap it up, and I'll ask you a little bit about how we can get more involved, or listeners can. But as a life coach, I've been life coaching since 2010. There's a lot of investigation, right? And I'm helping pull my clients' answers from them.
Yep.
But in the past couple months, it's really been weighing on me. Do I teach or force exercise plan and what you eat? Because in my own life, I realized there's no way I could have achieved the spiritual goals, physical goals, whatever, without changing my diet and my exercise. And so I just wanted to tell you that this conversation has come at a perfect time for me personally, as I am investigating how I want to show up in the world and help others. So thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome, and thank you for saying that. And I agree with you that it is a very holistic approach to bringing out the best in people. You can't just be okay in one area and really terrible in another and expect the whole thing to work really well together. It
Yep.
is in unison, right? If you eat terrible, your body is going to produce terrible results and you may end up sick. And when you're sick, see, nothing matters when you have your health the same way, right? Everything's okay. But then as soon as your health is declined, it's the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
Right. So being proactive on that as a life coach, helping to inspire people to consider that piece as a very foundational piece to their overall success in life is very valuable.
Yeah. Okay, so tell us real quick. I mean, in the show notes, we're going to put your website and everything like that. But just outline real quick for us and for listeners, what would it look like if I wanted to get started? And how do people actually work with you?
Yeah, my suggestion is that people keep an open mind. They're going to have preconceived beliefs about growing food. Typically, everybody does. Let's find out what's true for you, and let's help you understand that it doesn't need to be hard. You don't need to have a, air quotes, green thumb. You don't need to have a whole lot of extra time and resources to do this. You need to work with someone who can help design you a system that can produce without your effort the same way. But let's first discover what's true for you. So our business, Food Forest Abundance, gives people a complimentary 30-minute strategy session where you literally come meet with a certified permaculture expert. They will, with you, look at your property, where your climate zone is, give you some ideas about what's possible on your property. From there, you could make a decision to go out and learn about this stuff yourself. YouTube today is an incredible resource for people. We're not the only permaculture company in the world, so there's lots of options, whether you want to work with us or somebody else. Just get to work with somebody. But if you choose to work with us, we'd be honored. And the process is, once you decide to invest, it all starts with a design. And we like to think of this as an investment, not just a purchase, because investments produce returns. A purchase often doesn't give you anything back in the long term. But think about this. You could, again, spend $100 on a fruit tree, call it a peach or an apple or a pear or whatever. That fruit tree could produce you 150 pounds of fruit a year for decades. So you spend $100 once and get thousands or tens of thousands of pounds of food in return. Wow.
Yeah. Jeez.
Right? And now add in berry. Let's just take a suburban yard, small space. Even if you start adding in some, even just blueberries, strawberries, raspberries. So every summer you've got a whole bunch of fresh berries that are produced there on site. Right? A few fruit trees. It's not feeding you everything you need, but it could save you hundreds of dollars a year. And I don't know about you guys, but inflation's going crazy here in Canada, right?
That's insane. Yeah.
So if I could have some food be produced over and over and over and over and over again without having to spend the money on it, that helps with inflation. I don't know, right? It's much more than that. That's the great news, is it's really simple to get started. The food forest design is the foundational piece. Once that design is done and back into your hands, then you can choose how you implement it. You can do it yourself. You can DIY it. You can hire a local landscaping company. You can work with us. But people spend tens of thousands of dollars on landscaping that produces, again, no yield, no production. This could be the same amount of money up front, except you get benefit year over year over year. Plus it's beautiful. Plus it's functional. You can still put your walking paths and your gazebo and your hot tub and all the other stuff, but now you have an asset on your property instead of a liability.
Yeah. Super cool. Super cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your hour. I really appreciated this. This was just a beautiful conversation, and it made me feel excited about the future.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not only my own, but like humanity's and where we're going. And so thanks for bringing that positivity.
Oh, you're very welcome. And thank you both for shining a light on this, and absolutely thankful that it felt inspiring and gave you hope, because we need to have this hope. This is a time for us to act with faith and courage. We need to help people realize that the opportunities for a better world are here. We don't have to succumb to tyrannical measures from governments. We need to take our own power back. And like you said, with power comes great responsibility. It does, but what if it's just your own power? Then you're just responsible to you and the people around you, your family, your loved ones, right? And then from there, you inspire other peoples to do the same thing. Inspire your neighbors. Start working together to produce food. You help, you grow some on your property, they grow some on theirs, right? And soon enough, we have abundant communities of neighbors helping neighbors, reconnected with each other again. And then it continues to ripple out. And we change the world.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So I feel the same way as Mindy. This has been like, I feel like I should have paid a ticket, paid a price to get this information, and I could have listened for a lot longer. And I'm looking because my wife is very much into this, and I can't wait to share this with her. Very, very cool. Thank you, man.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Mindy. I really enjoyed our conversation. Lots of love to you both, and have an amazing day.
Thank you for listening to the Chasing Thoughts podcast. Please support us by liking, subscribing, or leaving a review or comment. We would really appreciate it. If you'd like to be a guest, we would love to explore life and what it means to be human with you. Please email us at chasingthoughtspodcast@gmail.com.